Good morning, Carl. I'm very glad to report a truly corking return to form, and thanks to the hard work of my artist on these, some lovely illustrations as well. Today I'm going to read you the story of the Three Dwarves. There was once upon a time a man who lost his wife and a woman who lost her husband, and the man had a daughter and so had the woman. The two girls were great friends and used often to play together. One day the woman turned to the man's daughter and said, "Go and tell your father that I will marry him, and then you shall wash in milk and drink wine. But my own daughter shall wash in water and drink it too." The girl went straight home and told her father what the woman had said. "What am I to do?" he said. "Marriage is either a success or it is a failure." At last, being of an undecided character, not being able to make his mind, he took off his boot and handing it to his daughter said, "Take this boot, which has a hole in the sole, and hang it up on a nail in the hayloft, and pour water into it. If it holds water, I will marry again, but if it doesn't, I won't." The girl did as she was bid, but the water drew the hole together, and the boot filled up to the very top. So went to follow the father's result. So he got up and went to see for himself, and when he saw it was true and no mistake, he accepted his fate, proposed to the widow, and they were married at once. The morning after the wedding, when the two girls awoke, milk was standing for the man's daughter to wash and wine for her to drink, but for the woman's daughter only water to wash and water to drink. On the second morning, water to wash and water to drink was standing for the man's daughter as well. And on the third morning, water to wash and water to drink was standing for the man's daughter, and milk to wash and wine to drink for the woman's daughter. And so it continued ever after. The woman hated the stepdaughter, and from the bottom of her heart did all she could to make her life miserable. She was as jealous as she possibly could be, because the girl was so beautiful and charming, while her old daughter was ugly and repulsive. One winter day, when there was a hard frost, and mountain and valley were covered with snow, the woman made a dress of paper, and calling the girl to her, said, "There, put on this dress, and go into the wood, and fetch me a basket of strawberries." This is not the kind of cold you might know from air conditioners, Carl. This is the real cold, the deep cold that comes in winter when wise men stay indoors, and if you have to go out, you wear several layers of clothing, like 4 or 5 at least. Sending someone out in a dress of paper is worse than uncomfortable. "Heaven help us," replied her stepdaughter. "Strawberries don't grow in winter. The earth is all frozen up, and the snow has covered up everything. And why send me in a paper dress? It's so cold outside that one's very breath freezes. The wind will whistle through my dress, and brambles tear it from my body." "How dare you contradict me?" said her stepmother. "Be off with you at once, and don't show your face again till you fill the basket with strawberries." And then she gave her a hard crust of bread, saying, "That will be enough for you today." And she thought to herself, "This girl will certainly perish of hunger and cold outside, and I shan't be bothered with her any more." The girl was so obedient that she put on the paper dress and set out with a little basket. There was nothing but snow far and near, and not a green blade of grass to be seen anywhere. When she came to the wood, she saw a little house, and out of it peeped 3 little dwarves. She wished them good day, and knocked modestly at the door. They called at her to enter, so she stepped in and sat down on a seat by the fire, wishing to warm herself and eat her breakfast. The dwarves said at once, "Give us some of your food." "Gladly," she said, and breaking her crust in two, she gave them half. They asked her what she was doing in the depths of winter in her thin dress. "Oh," she answered, "I've been sent to get a basket full of strawberries, and I shan't show my face again till I bring them with me." When she had finished giving away her bread, they gave her a broom and told her to sweep away the snow from the back door. As soon as she left the room to do so, the 3 little men consulted what they should give her as a reward for being so sweet and good, and sharing her last crust with them. The first said, "Every day she shall grow prettier." The second, "Every time she opens her mouth, a piece of gold shall fall out." And the third, "A king shall come and marry her." The girl in the meantime was doing as the dwarfs had bidden her, sweeping the snow away from the back door, and what do you think she found there? Heaps of fine ripe strawberries that showed a dark red against the white snow. She joyfully picked enough to fill her basket, thanked the little men for their kindness, shook hands with them, and ran home to bring her stepmother what she had asked for. When she said "good evening," a piece of gold fell out of her mouth. Then she told what had happened to the woods, and every word a piece of gold dropped from her mouth, and so that the room was soon covered with them. "She has surely more money than wit to throw gold about like that," said her stepsister, but in her secret heart she was very jealous, and determined that she too would go in the wood and look for strawberries. But her mother refused to go, saying, "My dear child, it is far too cold, you might freeze to death." The girl, however, left her no peace, and she was forced at last to give in, but she insisted on putting on a beautiful fur cloak, and she gave her bread and butter and cakes to eat along the way. Just explain that one, Carl. In the times when these stories were in, having butter for your bread meant you had money. It was a delicacy. Very often people ate their bread plain. The girl went straight to the little house in the wood, and as before the three little men were looking out of the window. She took no notice of them, as without so much by your leave or with your leave, she flounced into the room and sat herself by the fire and ate her bread and butter cakes. She said, "Give us some." He answered, "No, it's hardly enough for myself, so catch me give you any." When she had finished eating, they said, "There's a broom for you. Go and clear up our back door." "I shall see myself further," she answered rudely. "Do it yourself. I'm not your servant." When she saw that they didn't want me to give her anything, she left the house in no amiable frame of mind. Then the three little men consulted what they should do about it, because she was so bad and had such an evil, covetous heart, and she grudged everyone their good fortune. The first said, "She shall grow uglier every day." The second, "Every time she speaks, a toad shall jump out of her mouth." And the third, "She shall die a most miserable death." The girl searched for strawberries, but she found none, and returned home in a very bad temper. When she opened her mouth to tell her mother befallen her in the wood, a toad jumped out, and so everyone was quite disgusted with her. The stepmother was more furious than ever, and did nothing but plot mischief against the man's daughter, who was growing more and more beautiful by the day. At last, one day, the wicked woman took a large pot, put it on the fire, and boiled some yarn in it. When it was well scalded, she hung it round the poor girl's shoulder, then giving her an axe, made her break a hole in the frozen river, and rinsed the yarn in it. The stepdaughter obeyed as usual, went and broke a hole in the ice. And when she was in the act of wringing out the yarn, a magnificent carriage passed, and the king sat inside. The carriage stood still, and the king asked her, "My child, who are you, and what in the wild world are you doing there?" "I'm only a poor girl," she answered, "and I'm rinsing out my yarn in the river." Then the king was sorry for her, when he saw how beautiful she was. As he said, "Will you come away with me?" "Most gladly," she replied, for she knew how willingly she would leave her stepmother and sister, and how glad they would be to be rid of her. So she stepped into the carriage and drove away with the king, and when they reached his palace, the wedding was celebrated with much splendor. So all turned out just as the three little dwarfs had said, and the queen gave birth to a little son. After a year, the queen gave birth to a little son, and when the stepmother heard of her good fortune, she came to the palace with her daughter by way of paying a call, took up her abode there. Now one day, when the king was out and nobody else was near, the bad woman took the queen by her head and her daughter by the heels, and they dragged her from the bed and flung her out the window into a stream which flowed beneath it. Then the stepmother laid her ugly daughter in the queen's place and covered up with clothes, so nothing was seen. When the king came home and wished to speak to his wife, the woman called out, "Quietly, quietly, this will never do. Your wife is very ill. You must let her rest all today." The king suspected no evil, and didn't come again till next morning. When he spoke to his wife, and she answered him, instead of the usual piece of gold, a toad jumped out of her mouth. Then he asked what it meant, and the old woman told us nothing but weakness, and would soon be all right again. That same evening, the scullion noticed a duck swimming up to the gutter, and saying as it passed, "What does the king, I pray you tell? Is he awake or sleeps he well?" And receiving no reply, continued, "And all my guests, are they asleep?" And the scullion answered, "Yes, one and all, they slumber deep." Then the duck went on, "And what about my baby dear?" And he answered, "Oh, it sleeps soundly, never fear." Then the duck assumed the queen's shape, and went up to the king's room, tucked him up comfortably in his cradle, and then swam back to the gutter again in the likeness of a duck. This repeated 2 nights, and the third the duck said to the scullion, "Go and tell the king to swing his sword 3 times over me on the threshold." The scullion did as the creature bade him, and the king came in with his sword and swung it 3 times over the bird, and lo and behold, his wife stood before him once more, alive and as blooming as ever. The king rejoiced greatly, but kept the queen in hiding till the Sunday on which the child was to be christened. And at the christening he said, "What punishment does that person deserve who drags another out of bed, throws him or her, as the case may be, into the water?" And the wicked old stepmother answered, "No better fate than to be put in a barrel with sharp nails, and be rolled down the hill into the water." "You have pronounced your own doom," said the king, and he ordered a barrel to be made lined with sharp nails, and into it he put the bad old woman and her daughter. Then it was fastened down securely, and the barrel was rolled down the hill till it fell into the river. Well, I think we all are fairly clear on the morals of this particular story, Carl, but what particularly strikes me also is, and this is a theme that you'll have to know about if you come to Europe, is never ever be rude to the fair folk. They tend not to take it very well. Anyway, and on that note, love you to pieces. Talk again tomorrow.